Hey everyone, Sean here with another countdown to the Dark Knight Rises video, and we are back to the comics again. I've got a huge stack to show you guys today. We started off with Nightfall, which was 19 issues. It followed the breaking of Batman by Bane and the fallout afterwards. We went into Knightquest The Search, which followed Bruce Wayne on his quest to save Chandra Kinsolving and Jack Drake from being kidnapped at the end of Nightfall. At the same time that was going on, Knightquest The Crusade was going on, and it follows Jean-Paul Valley in his quest to live up to the standard that is Batman. And it all kicks off with Detective Comics 667. And he struggles through this. This is actually the longest story arc in the entire Nightfall saga. As I said, Nightfall's 19 issues. Knightquest The Search was only 8 issues, which I feel was really underplayed. They should have actually devoted a little more time to Bruce Wayne. If anything, Jean-Paul Valley's story, which runs for a full 26, I think, issues, which is a whopping big number indeed, is a little bit overplayed. So in these first few issues, we're kind of getting the gist, but it kind of gets hammered home before the story starts to get furthered. So the gist of what's going on is Jean-Paul Valley on the surface is an arrogant prick. You know, he's the guy who's like, you know, I'll redesign the Bat costume, I'll do whatever I want, I'm in charge. But at the same time, he's really, really insecure because he's got these demons floating around in his head from being brainwashed when he was in college. And they're trying to get him to kill villains. The crusade is nothing less than a holy crusade against crime, and, you know, death is not in any way a barrier for some of the voices in his head, but that's something that he struggles with. He also struggles with the idea that, is he really, you know, a suitable replacement for Bruce Wayne? Does he live up to it? And then on one hand, he'll be saying, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not as good as Bruce Wayne, and I hate myself for it. And on the other hand, he's like, Bruce Wayne, who cares about Bruce Wayne? I am all there ever needs to be. I am the Batman, and the only true Batman, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of a thread that runs throughout these early issues, where he faces off with sort of random villains. At the very beginning, as you can see from the cover here, he casts off Robin. He is a one-man show. He does not want any help. And he has mixed success through these first couple issues of Detective Comics. We jump over to Shadow of the Bat, where he faces off with the Tallyman, who I don't really remember. These first couple story arcs are kind of just villain of the week kind of fare, other than the very beginning when he faces off with Robin in the very first couple of issues there. We get to Knightquest The Crusade in Batman, issue 501, and he faces off with Mekros. One of the things with these early issues is they're very Spawn-like, I feel like. I mean, you've got a lot of sort of imagey characters, so 502, you get a look at what Mekros looks like. He also faces off with Gunshot or something like that. I can't remember. Gunhawk? I can't remember his name. Anyway, either way, lots of people dressed in fancy sort of like, you know, Stormwatch Wildcats kind of costumes. And also, with this issue, you've got all the chains everywhere, and throughout the issue, you've got chains like flying around in weird ways, and it's very, very, very Spawn-like. Anyway, he faces off with Mekros, and you're sort of setting up Jean-Paul Valley's understanding of Gotham and how the mob rules Gotham and how he sort of interprets that and deals with it. Now, a little bit further in, we do have a face-off with Catwoman, in which she is sort of dealing with basically some environmentalist issues, and Jean-Paul Valley is both obsessed with Catwoman and despises her because, you know, she's beautiful and he's clearly infatuated with her, but he thinks of her as nothing but a villain. And so we have this crossover with Catwoman and Batman, and it runs for 4 issues, and by the end of it, he's left completely humiliated because Catwoman all along was trying to do the right thing, and he was so blinded by her beauty and the fact that she is supposed to be a villain that he just didn't know, you know, he didn't know which end was up, and basically he made a fool of himself. And that all wrapped up in Catwoman number 7. Now, as we get a little further in here, This issue is kind of interesting. This is Detective Comics 670. This is kind of a one-shot, and this is Jean Paul Valley's encounter with Mr. Freeze. And all along through this whole run, people are thinking Batman's acting weird. You know, Catwoman thinks, well, this is obviously not Batman because he knows me and he knows that I wasn't doing, you know, something evil, yet here Batman is chasing after me like I'm just some random villain. The same thing kind of happens here, where I think it's Renee Montoya has to guard this guy who's in this block of ice, and the ice is slowly melting, and of course, who comes out but Mr. Freeze? And Jean Paul Valley doesn't know who this guy is. And so at the end, she's like, well, you know, how did you not know who that was? It was Mr. Freeze. And, you know, they have this sort of moment of, like, who is this guy? The other reason this issue is really interesting for me, though, is this is early, probably January 1994, something like that, which means it came out probably late 1993, actually. And so this is very, very close to the time that Heart of Ice, the famous Batman animated series cartoon in which they totally redefined the character of Mr. Freeze, came out. So it's kind of interesting to see that interpretation of Mr. Freeze, and this one where he's literally just a lumbering ice giant, and that's about all there is to it. He's very one-note, you know, nothing about his wife, nothing, anything like that. It's all very much just this giant frozen guy trying not to warm to death, obviously, because he has to stay cold. Anyway, moving on, we have a run-in with some illegal immigrants that Jean Paul Valley deals with in a couple of issues of Shadow of the Bat. Before we get to what my particular favorite arc of this whole Knightquest Crusade run, which is Jean Paul Valley's face-off with the Joker. And it all kicks off, it's teased earlier, but it kicks off with Detective Comics 671, where all these movie monsters are chasing around Jean Paul Valley. And basically, the Joker is a glorified filmmaker at this point, and he's got Hollywood to invest in a movie called The Death of Batman, in which he's actually going to pay people to go and try and kill Batman, and he's going to film the whole thing. You can see he gets the drop on Robin, however, it's a little more complicated than that. Won't spoil it if you're going to read it. And ultimately, it comes down to just sort of a big showdown between Jean Paul Valley and Joker, the director. And the thing I really loved about this story is there's some great sort of kind of Dick Sprang kind of elements where you've got all the giant things. You've got a giant piano that Batman fights the Joker on, and you've got all these Halloween characters and dress up, and it's very sort of a classic Batman, you know, 1950s, late 1940s story. However, at the same time, you have that juxtaposed with this sort of 1990s Image Comics influenced Batman who just looks so out of place in that world. And so it's this great sort of juxtaposition between the old and the new. Made this story a lot of fun. Obviously, the fact that the Joker is in it, having some kind of crazy harebrained director scheme, doesn't hurt it at all either. But overall, this was really the high point for me in Knightquest The Crusade. Now, there's really only one more major arc that has a lot of sort of guest villains along the way, but it all centers around this man, who is Abattoir. He is a villain who was introduced in the early 90s, and he's just sort of a one-note serial killer. He's kind of interesting. He thinks that his family's evil and they're gonna kill him and blah blah blah, but basically, long story short, he's just a crazy guy who goes around killing people. And he is ultimately going to be the guy who breaks Jean Paul Valley's mental back, if you will. So we have this whole run-in with Abattoir, and he's killing off people, and Batman is trying to catch up with him. And he gets away, and he catches him, and he gets away many times. And in the intervening times, you get sort of villains of the week. You've got Clayface story here in Shadow of the Bat, but Abattoir's kind of in the background of it. And that kind of continues the thread throughout all of these stories. The important thing that happens, though, in this arc is that basically, Abattoir is very nearly killed by Batman, and the person, he has basically a person in this sort of Saw-esque trap, and he's gonna die over several hours if they can't find out where he is. And Batman is so blind set on catching up with Abattoir and taking him down that when he leaves Abattoir for dead in this fiery pit, as you can see on the cover here to Batman 508, that person's death is basically guaranteed at that point. So while John Paul Bailey doesn't directly kill Abattoir, basically you have this moment where he could save Abattoir or he could not save Abattoir. And he decides not to. And it's a very disturbing moment indeed for the Bat family. Robin is there and witnesses it and sees that, yes, Jean Paul Valley has truly gone off the deep end. And meantime, you have this horrible moment when, you know, the innocent person that Batman is supposed to be protecting is basically, you know, has a death sentence written for them because he let the only person who could save them die. And that is exactly what Commissioner Gordon confronts him with in Shadow of the Bat number 28. And in this issue, as you can see, we have the complete loss of trust between Commissioner Gordon and Batman. He knows full well that this is not the Bruce Wayne Batman that he's known and worked with for many, many years. This is a different Batman with a different itinerary for justice, and he's had enough. And everything basically wraps up in Detective Comics number 675, in which we just sort of have a few loose ends that get tied up. You can see Jean Paul Valley has kind of redesigned his suit a little bit, and all the while he's trying to refine his suit and refine his suit. And here we're getting, you know, version 2.0, and he has truly gone off the deep end at this point. He has given in to the voices in his head that say, killing's okay, you know, this isn't just a crusade for justice, it's a crusade for revenge and retribution. And that's where we leave off with Jean Paul Valley. There is one more issue of Knightquest, which I will be back with in a separate video because it kind of ties in both Knightquest the Crusade and Knightquest the Search. And that'll be a very, very, very short video because it is only one issue. And then I will be back again very, very soon with Knight's End, the final part of the Nightfall saga. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you all very soon, and look forward to watching your videos. If you are new to this channel and you want to subscribe, hey, the button's up there. And if you don't want to subscribe, hey, button's still up there if you want to do it for me. Anyway, and then obviously thumb up and all that fun stuff. Leave a comment below. I do have a playlist of all of these Dark Knight Rises countdown videos, so if you're interested in seeing more Nightfall related books, Bane related books, stuff like that, feel free to check that out. If you're on my featured page, you should see a little thing off to the side. And anyway, that's all I got, so I'll talk to you soon. Bye.